Happening. So, all right, welcome everyone. I'm here with Kevin Dong, aka K Dong, the lead developer of co-op in Starcraft 2. Is that actually the official title? Is it?
Lead,
You tell me.
lead
You tell me.
co-op designer?
Lead
Probably
co-op
more
designer.
accurate.
That's a little shorter too.
Well,
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here.
lovely to be here,
and
Winter.
and this is actually Kevin's first time at. Was it your first time at Gamescom?
It is my first time at Gamescom. I've been to a lot of events in the United States, like PAX's, South by Southwest, Blizzcon, of course. But I've never been to Gamescom either as an exhibitor or a spectator or a regular
Yeah,
visitor.
there are so many people here.
Yeah.
Of course, you are in and out of all sorts of places, but did you get a chance to play any of the other Blizzard games or updates here?
Well, to be honest, if I wanted to play other Blizzard titles, I could probably do so.
You know what? Now that I think about it, that was not the greatest question.
But I am planning to get. I haven't done it yet, but by the end of the day, I want to get some tattoos from the temporary tattoos from the World of Warcraft booth.
I was like, wow, okay,
I
they're
know.
doing tattoos, and the people are really into it. All right.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about Warcraft. We're here to talk about Starcraft, and most of the reason that myself and Loco are here is to show off Tychus, the newest co-op commander, and one of the most unique, and this is the first time. So you joined the Blizzard team at the end of last year?
Yep.
Around November, December?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like after BlizzCon?
After BlizzCon.
After BlizzCon. So the last co-op commander that was released, Han and Horner.
Sure.
I mean, Han and Horner, the combination of Mira Han and Matt Horner, a little bit more standard, just producing units out of buildings. You have a wide spread of different units, but relatively standard. So you came in, and now a few things with Tychus. I mean, obviously you already know, but this is the first time you've released a commander that, I guess by canon or by lore, whatever you want to say, is not confirmed to be alive in the game. So were you the one making that decision, or was that already the direction the team was heading after BlizzCon?
Right. So the way we see it is, we don't really think of characters in our game as either alive or dead, kind of Schrodinger's cat. With regards to co-op, has never been officially canon to the game, and it's always what if scenarios. Like for example, Nova's Griffin, she gets that at the end or after the end war, after Amon is defeated in the Nova Covert Ops missions. But co-op is traditionally said to occur before the end war ends. So there's already some, like, if you want to go hardcore into canon, there's already some discrepancies. Tychus is the first commander that is canonically dead, but we've never seen it as, oh, we're breaking the barrier now. With Tychus, it's always been like, what do people want? What do our fans want? And we are seeing that our fans do want Tychus right now. So I think it's a great time to release him right now. So
Yeah.
not my decision.
Yeah, I was talking to David Sum, your predecessor,
Sure.
last year, and he was a little bit didn't have much to say on the subject of bringing back.
Being a bit coy.
Yeah, bringing back potentially commanders. Well, you can go through a list. Spoilers: Zeratul, plenty of other characters from the campaign. I'm sure you could name plenty, but so not only breaking that, but this is the first command. Well, I think outright the first commander that just straight up doesn't really have units that aren't essentially hero units.
Right.
So could you explain a little bit, one, of why you thought that was the way to go for Tychus, and two, how that's going to affect potentially commanders in the future?
Right. So a lot of it is based around, well, whenever we come up with what a commander is and how he plays, we kind of go back to the lore. What is he all about? And for Tychus, it's always been about controlling small groups of units, because number one, we based it off of the campaign mission Belly the Beast, in which him, Raynor, Stedman, and Swan go into this underground tunnel to kind of defeat the Nidus worms. And also, because of his history with the Heavens Devils, he led a small elite fighting squad back in the days. And a large part of it has to do with our design process as well. I think I was talking to Loco about this as well, but our first iteration of Tychus had a completely different mechanic.
Could you tell us something
Sure.
about what that was?
Sure. It was called Rage/Coldheart. It's similar to like WoW Warriors, in which the more damage you deal and the more damage you take, the stronger your units become, and that includes Tychus and all your units.
So
Originally he had like he had standard Marines that were a little stronger than regular Marines. He had like Marauders and Medevacs and siege tanks that you could like the Legacy of the Void siege tanks from before if they were nerfed before you could pick them up. Like he had a very standard Terran arsenal with some special abilities. Like his siege tanks would get more AOE the more it fired. His Marines.
So
would
that kind of sounds like a bit different Nova style,
right.
with a lot of. So
two problems we found with that. The first was that the idea wasn't cohesive enough, and the second of all was that it didn't feel like Tychus at all. It was more like a general leading his army, and Tychus just never.
Tychus never struck me as
Right.
a leader or a follower, so I guess that's why he has maybe
He has
something
friends.
he could call friends in one sense of the word. So you were actually talking about how Tychus was originally, like, for him as a hero, like he was always kind of intended to be a hero unit, just on the field himself.
Right.
But you said you're inspired by like warriors from WoW, like building up fury or rage or energy or whatever.
Sure.
So did that kind of bleed over into this is just what Tychus is about? You have all these specialized, like say, classes of units instead of just a bunch of maybe a little bit stronger or different StarCraft units.
Right. So my idea, or something I really focus on when designing commanders or any game, is the idea of choice. I want players to be able to go into a mission and have a lot of interesting decision making that you may have to come up with on the spot. And when we started with this outlaw idea, we knew we had to have a lot of outlaws, and we wanted them to all be very specialized because we didn't want the choice to be meaningless. We didn't want we didn't want people to say these are the 5 outlaws that you pick no matter what the mission.
Yeah.
And so first of all, how do we do that? What's our starting off point? And our starting off point was what we came up with was the WoW classes, because the WoW classes they've been like tried and tested. They've existed for so long, and they've obviously worked out very well. They're very different from one another. We've got like the tanks, we've got the DPS.
Well, could you actually, like, we've got the outlaws right here.
Sure.
Could you maybe we'll just go through the first 3, which, well, how about the first 3?
Sure.
We have Blaze, which is a fire bat, a lot of HP, a lot of AoE potential. He's not very mobile, but he can take a beating. So
Right.
is that inspired by something a little bit more like a tank kind of warrior or something like that?
Yeah, so I would say the end result of what we have with Tychus, maybe only half of them are inspired by WoW, because we axed a lot of previous outlaws that didn't fit our design. We tested a lot of different outlaws.
Can you give us one?
Sure. There was the idea of a sentient widow mine in the past. A widow mine that gained sentience and walked around and detonated enemies and disabled them with like EMP and some other lockdown
Like
abilities.
a bionic
Yeah.
or cybernetic, I guess,
Right.
kind of little mine.
And,
So you were kind of messing around with other types of units
right,
and
and
styles.
that was, I believe that was like the rogue.
Oh,
That
yeah.
started off with the
Coming
rogue.
in, maybe burrowing under.
Yeah, burrowing and then like detonating.
Yeah. But you ended a little bit more on the more standardized.
Sure.
Well, they got 2 legs for one thing.
Right.
Pretty
so,
much everyone
so
there.
a lot of our design was based on these guys all had to be they had to be singular people. We didn't want like a team, like maybe like 3 people in a tank or something. And we also wanted them to all be ground units, because I don't think it makes as much sense if like one guy is just flying up in the sky.
Seems
Right.
a little disproportional.
Right. And then the third thing is we wanted them to be bipedal. We wanted them to like walk on 2 legs to give them more of like a personality.
Yeah.
Like we feel like if something is like in a siege tank, for example, it feels
Yeah.
more like a unit rather than like an individual person. So we wanted to give them all like in some ways like individual personalities.
And
and
yeah,
what-
I've been playing a little bit, and I noticed like you can almost always find a combination depending on the mission, but it's rare. Like you can, I think, like with many co-op commanders, you can stick by one style or one build, and you're probably going to be pretty good for the most part. But we'll talk, because of how the difficulty settings work, we're going to talk a little bit more about difficulty settings in a bit. So stay tuned on that. But I do like how you do have options, and then if you need, it's pretty interesting when you're getting into it, and you're like maybe you're doing like custom mutators or something like that. And you're like, oh, we're gonna need someone who's
Right.
able to take down big, strong targets, or we're gonna need someone with a lot of AOE. So I definitely think now. Well, let me finish that thought. I definitely think that adding all the outlaws, they do feel unique. So I think that was pretty. I don't think there's another commander out there that has something like that. I can't really like. I guess everyone has their own paths, and you go for a unit composition, but it doesn't really feel like. It feels like a different, the same team you're fighting on, but maybe just a different style. But this one, if you end up like if you open up with Blaze and Lieutenant Nikara for that really like hard hitting, it's going to be way different than if you opened up with say Vega and James Sirius Sykes with the Warhound, like depending if you need anti-air stuff like that.
Are you getting used to the name so far?
Yeah, I am. You've got Blaze, you've got Lieutenant Morales, and then you have the Herc,
Okay.
and then just Vega.
Yeah,
She just has one name.
Vega.
Yeah,
she's a
Oh, I
code
guess
name.
all the ghosts kind of have like
Yeah.
Nova.
Yeah,
What's Nova's first and last
I
name?
don't know. Well,
Exactly.
I think what it is, according to the lore, they like give them new identities,
Oh
new
yeah,
code names.
Brainwash 'em.
Right.
Something like that. We'll call it. We'll call it. Give them new identity. But
It's a more PR way of saying it.
no, with Tychus. So Tychus is this kind of unique commander, and it's following the trend which you've mentioned. Terran, Zerg, Protoss. Terran, Zerg, Protoss. Okay, well, I mean to an extent, Terran, Zerg, Protoss. So just hinting at what could potentially be the next commander, we had a Zerg. Okay, I don't think this trend is holding up, is it? No,
probably
it's not. But I think Terrans are a little bit overrepresented now.
Well,
Okay,
so I think that depends on whether you consider Stukov a Terran or a Zerg. If you consider, if
I think I consider him more of a Zerg.
Okay.
He feels like more of a Zerg,
So if
even
you
though
can-
he has Terran units. Yeah, I started reading him up. I'm like, wait a second, that I should have done a little more research. But
I think if you consider him a Zerg, I think it's 5/5/5
Oh.
right now, actually.
Mm.
But well, you mentioned
so
that the first
okay,
three.
okay. In a new command, let's say just throw lore out the window.
Sure.
What interesting things about a new commander would you want personally? Like not Tychus, you've already done this. What would be another unique style? Obviously not a specific idea, but like a style of commander that's different than build a base, like maybe different types of units or varieties of units. Is there anything else on the table when it comes to styles of commanders? I almost can't even really think of it. Like maybe something based on only buildings or something like that.
Maybe.
Well, I'm not counting Carricks in there. But
Yeah, that's possible as well. A common request is Celendis, and she only has air units. That's one. But I don't know. If I give away all my good ideas, I'll have none left
yeah, I
to
guess
put in the commanders themselves.
I guess that's fair. That's fair. Is there anything else about Tychus, like one thing that took a lot of time and a
Right.
lot of like development and refining that might not be obvious, but say whether it's like types of masteries or upgrades or how they work with other commanders.
Right.
What's one thing that really took a lot more time than people might realize?
Right. Yeah. So, like, what I realized after joining the team is that there's a lot of things that people don't see, or they don't. Some things are never very obvious to that it took a lot of work to just the general player. And two things I would point out specifically for Tychus is the sheer number of icons, or the sheer number of the art, the tooltips and the icons that they have. Tychus has more icons than any other commander, partially because he has so much gear. He has so many things to upgrade.
Oh, we can actually. I want to get into that as well.
Right.
You mentioned if you haven't checked out Tychus or seen some of the overviews yet, the outlaws aren't just like they don't just come out and that's your unit.
Right.
It's not just picking your outlaws. It's also picking your outlaws' gear.
Right.
Which is each outlaw has 3 pieces of gear that you can pick from that are quite expensive. Like they're 1 or 2 pieces of gear is about as much as another outlaw themselves.
Right.
And without their gear, you're not nearly close to the potential of one of them. So this kind of forces a style, as you mentioned, going kind of taller instead of wider, where you have 1 or 2 strong outlaws with you with all their gear, with their advanced weapons and their larger splash damage or healing or whatever, instead of just picking up another combination because it's actually going to be more effective to have 2 very strong outlaws
Right.
instead of just getting everything quick. So that's way different than most of the other commanders where it's like get more Zerglings or get more Marines or get more Vultures or whatever. So I personally like that a lot because when I'm playing co-op, I want something a lot different than ladder. But you mentioned the inspiration from WoW? Did that also kind of come from looking a little bit more at other styles of games?
So that came from a lot of different areas. The primary reason for that was we wanted a lot of decision making. It kind of follows that theme of like which outlaws you pick. In addition to that, what gear do you pick, and finally, what's the order you do all of those things in? So it adds even more decision points, and not only that, but because the gear is so expensive, we want it to feel like it's an impactful decision, and we want each gear upgrade to feel like, oh, this obviously changed the course of battle in some way. In addition to that, Tychus, as you mentioned, he only has 5 outlaws, so
well, he can pick only 5 of a potential of 10.
Right. Potential of 9.
Oh, 9.
Right.
And
4
Tychus
or
himself.
4 out of 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could say it multiple ways. But another way to look at it is with other commanders, you have to, in order to scale up, you train more units, or you warp in, or you spawn more units. But with Tychus, he doesn't have that. So we had to come up with a way in order for him to spend his money in order to scale throughout the game. And the way we came up with that was gear. Another way we came up with, another way we tried to alleviate that was we gave him 5 levels of upgrades instead of 3. Yeah. So he vastly
the engineering
improves.
bay has a lot to work
There's a lot
with.
of stuff
Well,
in the
on the
engineering
engineering bay as well. On the engineering bay as well, there is not just your normal weapon upgrades, but you also have specific to. And now, one thing I just want to touch on quick is the way the outlaws work. You build a building really cheap, like 100-something minerals. There are 3 types: the guns,
Right.
the muscle, and the fixers. So right out of an action movie there.
Yeah.
So 3 types, like on your guns, you have your strong DPS. I believe it's Tychus, Crooked Sam, the Reaper, and also James Sykes, the Warhound, doing the damage there. And then for your muscle, you got Blaze, Rattlesnake, and Cannonball, a Fire Bat, a Marauder, and a Herc, respectively. And then your fixers, Vega, Nux, and Nikara. So some of these are more literal than others. But now what I noticed is while you have those 3 types, the only thing that really distinguishes them that much, because you can easily go from like one of the guns to one of the fixers, like get Crooked Sam and then get Lieutenant Nikara. The only thing that really sets them apart are the upgrades on the engineering bay, because not only do they like infantry armor, you have 1 for each type. So I mean that's not really a question there. That's just pointing out another way. Like if you're like I'm just gonna get muscle, you're gonna really focus on those upgrades. I think like you can justify maybe 3 engineering bays for them as well in certain situations. So with Tychus and this style, like more decision making oriented, are you deliberately or kind of happily unintentionally targeting maybe newer or lower speed players who aren't maybe going to macro up as quickly or be around the map as quickly? Because if they make smart decisions, you got 5 commanders. And another thing I want to touch on is how you have a single group in the command card, so you can cast all their abilities. So was that intentional, a focus on that decision making and helping lower speed players, or was it just kind of a happy unintended part of it?
All right, so let's start off with the first part regarding whether Tychus is geared more towards newer players. So I wouldn't say necessarily we aimed it towards that, but so what we try to do with all the commanders is we try to make them different from the previous X number of commanders. And Tychus, I think we've done a really good job at that. He's just different, and I think from discussions within the team, we found that maybe Tychus is going to be really good for players just getting into the game of StarCraft, but maybe he's going to be a bit more difficult for players who are very familiar with StarCraft, but they kind of see this as like this is a little different from what I'm used to.
It took about 2 hours before I was kind of getting the hang of what I was doing. I just want to get upgrades and all that.
Right. So I would say it's like more of that. It's different rather than it's like aimed towards newer players. But with regards to the command card, what happened there is when we were playtesting, we found out that it was really difficult for the newer players to tab through the command.
A lot of them don't
each the
even know
characters.
what that means.
Right,
Like,
right. What's the tab key, right?
Yeah.
So we just wanted to find a way in which we could really effectively make Tychus a more new player-friendly commander. And honestly, I think if we didn't have that functionality of having all the abilities on one command card, I think it just wouldn't work. I think this concept wouldn't work at all.
So now I want to tie that a little bit in. Obviously, I'm more into multiplayer. And a lot of players are, though plenty of them are just stuck on co-op. I mean, enjoy co-op more than multiplayer. That's a better way of putting it. That functionality, could we in the future potentially be looking at, for multiplayer, an option to set it up so, say you have Sentries, Disruptors, and High Templar on a hotkey, instead of having to try to select them differently, they could all be on the same command card. I mean, so you're saying the functionality is potentially there, but that's, well, take it from there.
All right, so we could potentially do that, but I don't think we're quite looking into it right now. Number one, because I think that would change the balance of the game very much. And number two, I think this system works because it's very contained. Because you maximum can only have 5 outlaws, and there are coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, maybe it's a design decision, there are 5 spaces in the bottom row for you to select. So if you want to, I don't know if we can go into a game. Oh, Loco is already playing a game, so probably can't. But anyway.
Yeah, there's plenty. We have videos up, and you can see Tychus played. Myself and Loco have uploaded several.
For your example, let's say we have a Protoss army.
Yeah.
Let's say we have like Stalkers, we have High Templar, we have Disruptors, we have all the units. I think it would be difficult for us to design a way in which all those abilities would be.
I think it would have to take like a core redesign of the command card.
Right. It would have to take like a much bigger redesign than.
And if it was
anything in co-op.
If it wasn't a total redesign, then it would be even more confusing, because maybe some situations you could use it and some you couldn't, and then you have to figure out those situations. That's understandable, while disappointing, I will say. So, with that, is there any other like functionality or design, like just functionality in the game, like the command card that Tychus brought that none of the other commanders did before?
Functionality-wise, I would say, so maybe this isn't like strict functionality, but the top bar for Tychus is a lot different from anything we've ever designed.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you've noticed about it.
Oh yeah.
But there's a lot of functionality going on in there. Like with a lot of other top bars, you just have the abilities there, but the top bar actually has a lot of UI elements that kind of tell you what's happening within the game. For example, the top bar tells you when your next outlaw is going to be available. You can actually click on the portrait in the top bar to take you directly to the to your Joey Ray's bar. You can also click on any outlaw to take you to that outlaw. So if you're having trouble finding your outlaws on the map, that's less of a problem. In addition to that,
it's a little bit cleaner than if you had like 5 hero keys in order to click.
Exactly. And that was another way of simplifying it down. Yeah. Another option was like putting it on all your F keys, F1, F2, F3, but that gets a little messy, and there's a lot of space, UI space, that it's fighting for. But going back to the top bar, another functionality is you can actually see which gear and how many pieces of gear you have for each outlaw.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I did notice. It was like on the 3rd day I noticed that finally.
Oh yeah.
I was looking at it.
It's hard to tell, like, if you're not like specifically looking at it for some while.
And just a touch on the gear again. It was interesting how, like, you get 3 pieces of gear, and once you get all 3, you can unlock like a legendary or ultimate piece of gear that has essentially a huge boost to that, but it's very expensive to unlock. So another part of the decision making. No real question there, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So originally in our design, we had 4 pieces of gear that were the same level. They costed the same. But so 2 issues we ran into there is you didn't feel like you felt less that you were building up to something, as opposed to we have the ultimate or legendary gear now. And the other thing is,
it's like another piece.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing was we didn't want gear to be like drastically different prices, so people would have to memorize. Have to memorize, like, this gear is this price, but this gear is this price. So we wanted a way for us to differentiate gear in the sense that we wanted some gear to be more powerful than others. So the way we did that is to put it to lock it behind 3 other gear, and also to make it more expensive.
Yeah.
So it's
another decision.
Yeah, it's a more logical way of differentiating the gear rather than just making them all like weird and strange prices.
Yeah.
And yeah, another decision, like maybe you really want your ultimate gear, and like if you paid like 1,200, 400, I believe that's the price for gear.
It's not cheap.
Yeah, it's not cheap. But in addition to that price, you still have to buy all the other gear. All the regular gear, and those gear you might not necessarily want. Maybe they're not like efficient for the mission at hand, but you still need those as a prerequisite for your ultimate gear.
So that's going to lead right back into one thing that, I mean, myself and Loco notice. Obviously, we're experienced and plenty of co-op players. I know a lot of players are just playing on the lower difficulties. Mm-hmm. They're happy to play maybe the mutation or something each week, something like that. But I think we can kind of agree now with commanders being developed and like masteries being added. Brutal difficulty is not as brutal as it could be, right? Even with some of the mutations, depending on how you decide to handle them, it gets to the point where you can kind of just use a build, maybe 2, on a single commander, and you can beat almost essentially any mission. So are there any plans to essentially take it to another level, right, to make it more difficult for those players? And there are plenty of players out there who, and also we're going to talk a little bit about leaderboards as well. But first, any higher difficulty levels?
That's definitely something we're in constant and active talks about. We do realize the same things you are, that some players are doing very well. Some players have become masters at co-op basically, and they're basically easily going through all our missions and even a lot of the I would say less difficult mutations. But something I talked about with Loco is that a lot of people ask for something like Brutal Plus, which is
heroic,
right? So that their idea of that is basically adding more units or raising the HP of units or adding the damage of units. And our thought process behind that has always been, we're not sure how much that actually increases the difficulty, because there's a lot of powerful things in co-op. We have like these huge nukes that deal like 1,000 damage right now, and
I actually want to jump in, like, and this is something, an issue, well, I have at home. I mean, I'm streaming as well, so it's a strain, but I know for players with lower end computers, just adding more units, ever playing with Stukov, like, the more units, the more HP, like, it seems, but that's just a linear curve there. Like, people will get better. They'll figure out, these are the units that beat all those units. And it's a performance dip, which does, I can personally say, lessen the enjoyment of co-op if, like, by near the end of the mission, you're at 20 frames per second, right? You can't use all your cool abilities as easily. So, if you were to increase the difficulty, you would say you're leaning towards more of a decision-making base, maybe adding things like more objectives or more bonus objectives or a certain path you have to take instead of...
something maybe to that extent, but just adding maybe other factors into the game. Anything other than like just...
more units and more
stuff,
HP.
More explosions.
This time there's 12 hybrids instead of 9.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's being looked at,
that's
but
definitely
there's not a
timeline
on something like that.
I have nothing to announce at this point.
All right, well done. Yeah. And, well, speaking of timelines, co-op leaderboards, which have been announced that they're coming, the Ascension, level 1,000, up there. I don't know, has anyone reached 1,000 yet?
A lot of people have.
A lot of people have? You're going to raise it? Going to raise the cap?
Not enough people have for us to consider that.
Are we looking at over or under 1,000 people at level 1,000?
I don't have stats on that for you right now.
So it could be under.
I've never checked from our side how many people have hit Ascension or Star Ascension, as some people call it. But I definitely see people with Star Ascension icons on like Reddit.
And how many games would that take? Like,
well, it really depends on like whether you have Stim Pack, like how on top you are of the weekly mutations.
I assume these players are very on top of the weekly mutations and stuff like that.
I feel like these are the players that are going to be min-maxing. You kind of have to in order to play so many games.
And those are probably also the players like we'd like a higher difficulty level.
Yeah,
and
probably.
Well, tied into that is leaderboards. And obviously, I won't make you say it. The misgivings with leaderboards are once you add leaderboards, how much of that is going to mean every game is like, this is how you're supposed to do the mission. You're
Right.
not doing it right.
Exactly.
And then people just leave the game or something
Yep.
like that. So, leaderboards, when and how and why.
Okay, let's start at the first when. I don't have a timeline for you regarding
Soon?
leaderboards. Sometime.
It will happen.
Right. So when? What was your second question?
When
How?
and
Was it how?
how.
How? Okay, how? So,
Like, what will they look like? What is an idea of what they would look like when they are implemented?
So you actually mentioned something really interesting regarding, like, once leaderboards come online, this is how you're supposed to do the mission. Like if you're doing it any other way, you're doing it wrong. That's something we're definitely looking to avoid. Something we're looking with our design to minimize that impact. So there's a lot of thought going on right now about how do we design the leaderboards in order to accomplish that goal. And
do you see yourself maybe implementing something like a ranked, unranked, but in co-op, where ranked is we're fighting for leaderboard spots, and unranked is like you still get XP, stuff like that?
So our idea of how leaderboards would work is probably you only get ranked if you hit like top 200, like a Grandmaster League. So if you're not like shooting for that, I'm not sure like how much it would make sense for you to play unranked versus ranked in that situation.
Will you have an idea of how close you are to that top 200?
Probably, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's essentially like there's going to be co-op leagues to an extent.
Yeah, but there won't be like a Masters co-op league or a Diamond co-op league. You just kind of know your score, and based on that, you can tell kind of
Like
how
a
far you
matchmaking
are.
rating to an extent?
Sort of,
You're-
but
Seems
It's
pretty
not-
similar to a lot of
Okay.
ranking systems I've heard of. So you're going to have a number of points,
sure.
and then whoever has more points will be ranked higher?
Yes.
Okay, completely different
That's how
than
I
1v1.
That's how I see it would work.
And
But
what...
It's more so in 1v1 your score depends on like who you beat, right?
Yeah.
And in this it would be just like the score you achieve in a mission. So more like a traditional like arcade style leaderboard kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be because there are a lot of, I think a lot of co-op are those people who aren't going to show up in Twitch chat
Sure.
or on the forums,
Right.
or be hitting the ladder every few days or every day.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get feedback from those people? Like those people, the people who essentially play casually, might even play on casual.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way, like, is there any format that you get feedback from them, or do you just kind of see trends on what's happening?
We definitely get a lot of feedback from a lot of different forums, a lot of different, and a lot of different languages as well. I know our Chinese, Korean, Russian audiences are especially very in tune to co-op. There's always co-op chat in the client. That's another way we can get feedback as well.
Yeah, so you're
Yeah.
you're reading the chats.
And the chats are
You
really,
might be reading the chats
I
at
might be
any
reading
time.
the chats. They're really interesting.
So call out, just tag Kdong and co-op chat on all the servers, and you're sure to get through anytime. So I want to talk a little bit, like you were talking about rankings, and talk about multiplayer and co-op a little bit. What do you view? Is there an interest or an active effort to get co-op players to play more competitive, or vice versa?
I think so. This is not something Blizzard has done personally, or on our behalf especially. But something I found really interesting was Zerg Girl recently did a co-op stream, and she invited a lot of traditionally multiplayer players like Rotterdam or Cats, and for a lot of them it was almost their, I wouldn't say first time, but they hadn't really experienced co-op very much. And I
Roddy,
thought-
the co-op tryhard.
Yeah. He is a tryhard, but maybe not a co-op tryhard.
Get those leaderboards. But yeah, go on.
I found that was really interesting, like the dynamic between her and the traditionally multiplayer players, like getting them introduced. Some of them enjoyed it a lot. And it was just something they'd just never been introduced to. So that just brings a lot of inspiration to what we could do in the future.
So I'm gonna because Heroes of the Storm is actually based on the Starcraft 2 engine, and I know a lot of the reason a lot of features and things don't happen is just the difficulty of implementing them into the game, not necessarily the problem with the idea themselves. There's like in Heroes of the Storm, there's things like daily quests where you get a certain benefit or bonus for doing, like, playing 3 games as a warrior or something like that. Now, we don't have a currency system in StarCraft 2, and I'm not going to ask you any questions about that. I think that's probably for someone else. But is there any plan to implement something like that on top of or alongside the weekly mutators?
That's something we've talked about in the past, but I don't believe we have any ongoing plans regarding something like that. It's definitely interesting, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to open up questions to the chat eventually in a few minutes. In a few minutes, but first I want to talk about, because you've only been working at Blizzard. You went straight, like, before you worked at Blizzard, you were at Team Liquid, and then immediately you came to Blizzard and you just were the lead co-op designer.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just walk us a little bit through your time at Team Liquid?
Sure.
And how that, like, it seems like when you started a company, lead designer is a pretty big deal, even if it's just for a segment of the game, but a very hundreds of thousands of people are playing co-op.
Right.
So just walk us through that for a few minutes.
Right. So I've been a fan of StarCraft for a very, very, very long time, ever since 1998.
But a boy.
What?
But a boy.
But a boy. Yes, yes. I was a wee lad. And so I worked at Team Liquid. I did a lot of project management, a lot of team management, and one of my roles was the liaison to Blizzard. So one time I was over on the campus and I was like, "Hey, I have some cool co-op ideas," and
You gotta sidle up over them.
yeah, well, yeah. So basically they invited me to share those ideas, and I guess they liked them because they were like, "You should apply to be a game designer for us."
It's a pretty big hint.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Oh, cool, let's do that," and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, or I'm going to make you go into a little more detail, because you might be like, well, if I can just get a conversation with Blizzard, I have some good ideas.
Okay.
Maybe I can be a game designer.
Right.
I actually, before even he was lead co-op designer, you did a lot of the co-op guides for Team Liquid, which is something that is not typical Team Liquid esports content, right? But the thing that took me off guard, and I mean, I assume somebody was doing it, but you were the guy doing it. How many spreadsheets of this mission has this attack at this time in this area with these units and et cetera, like everything mapped out. Like if there was anyone to say this is the right build and this is how you play this mission to finish the quickest or get the most kills or accomplish the objectives, it's you. Like ballpark, how many spreadsheets? Or like how many rows of a spreadsheet?
For a co-op?
Yeah.
Probably like 10 or 20 spreadsheets. Well, right now I probably have more because it's more internal spreadsheets. I do use a lot of spreadsheets. My background is in spreadsheets, so I actually do. So I have an operations research background, which is basically optimization. Yeah. So you can kind of see how like optimization, StarCraft, co-op, speedrunning, all those tie in together. Even game design tie together very well. So I think just the
you got to know how to do it the best, and then you kind of got to figure out if that's fun or not.
Right. And so optimization, going back to that, is a lot like decision making as well. Like part of what I did in school and my background is about like the optimal way to make decisions. So I think that shows in both the Tychus design and in the commander revamps. I really like making decisions and kind of thinking about like why did I make those decisions.
I mean, I appreciate that, because if there are more commanders that are it was a few hours before Loco and I really got into it, like where we're playing Tychus and we're just kind of like, well, we can just beat the mission by doing the same thing every time.
Right.
But we start adding mutators, or we start going like getting Blaze to 7,500 kills, things like that. Once we started trying to work with all the potential variables, there's a lot of puzzle pieces. Hooked me on it. Yeah. So with that, is there anything else, like just the general design of co-op? Are you planning, just yes or no, are you planning on new maps?
Don't have anything to announce right now at this point.
Are you planning on a possibility of new maps?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And of course, new commanders. I assume something would be announced if you decided to no longer make commanders, but for the foreseeable future. And would you say the barrier is essentially broken now on characters that may or may not be alive in the current StarCraft?
The character never existed, I'll say that.
The character never existed?
The barrier never existed.
Oh.
Yeah.
It just in our minds.
Yeah, it's just in your minds.
Well, everything's just in our
Everything's
minds.
possible.
Okay. Well, anything else about co-op you'd like to talk about, or just design, or just anything? If you really want to go into detail about what your favorite part about the NBA is, then that's okay, I guess. But I don't think Blizzard would like that.
Yeah, probably not so much. So maybe we can go into some viewer questions.
Okay,
My
we'll get
favorite
right into
part.
it. Well, we'll start off with the obvious one. Give us your commander ideas, and we're going to get his reaction. Watch
Okay,
his face
sure.
very closely, and
yeah.
he won't give any answer.
Yeah.
But
maybe you have those people who know how to
hybrid
read
commander,
faces.
just like a hybrid, is the commander.
Okay, there's
War generals send another Gorgon Warfield.
Okay, yeah. You've been playing the campaign a lot, haven't you?
Achievement hunt.
Okay, right. Hold on. How many times have you done that mission?
It took me like 3 to get all the achievements.
Okay, yeah, he does say send another Gorgon pretty frequently.
Yeah. Tassadar.
Okay. Tassadar, he could use both the light and dark sides of the Templar force.
Yeah. Have like a cool crashing your carrier into something ability.
His ultimate would be like he sacrifices himself.
Yeah, like Tassadar's only allowed to be on the field for 10 minutes until he has to crash a carrier into something.
Sure.
Overmind.
Overmind, okay.
Yeah, I think that could be like just completely. I don't know how that would look for Zerg, but something. I'd be kind of interested in just a design style that's decentralized.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're no longer even really fighting for minerals, but instead maybe like units that die unless you're fighting or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Tosh.
Tosh, okay,
The Spectre. Ire Chef Commander. There you
Isn't
go.
Isn't he just a
there
zealot?
you go. No, but he's a chef.
He's
so
a chef zealot, though.
he would be serving up destruction.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. What would his mechanics be?
So first he'd be able to grab units and grapple them, and then there'd be an oven he could throw them in, and then it would roast as many units. But the oven only works at certain times.
So do you have to collect different
because
units?
it's a bad oven. Yeah, you have to collect different units. You have to get the dish.
Right. You have to get
and
the
dish
right.
is what gives you minerals, not the minerals.
Got it. Okay.
There you go. General Dugal, Gerard Dugal.
Gerard Dugal.
Do you know who that is?
From the UED.
Oh.
Yeah. He was in the original. He was in the Starcraft Brood War Terran campaign. He came from Earth, the United Earth Directory.
Sounds like a cool story, but I don't recognize his name. So I don't. How much does that factor in? Like obviously Tychus is a huge fan favorite.
Right.
I mean he's in Heroes, and all of that. How much? I mean, how much does that factor into deciding on what commander's
name
next?
value?
Yeah.
So I would say it's less name value and more how popular the commander is, or how popular the character is.
Yeah.
So, and I think those two are very related to one another.
Well, yeah. So it's a big part of it, is what you're saying. So we're not getting the what's his name? That is this portrait, the starter portrait.
Kaczynski?
Kaczynski, I think it is.
Right.
Yeah. Just complains the entire time and supports his commander when he stops drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So, Rohana, Zeratul. Have you heard of Zeratul?
Who's Zeratul?
Some dead guy. Yeah. Zeratul. But we already have a Dark Templar commander.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Isn't it? Is that? Would you say that's a mind barrier, or would you say that's an actual barrier?
Well, it's definitely a barrier. I don't know how serious it is, but we'd probably have to design Zeratul in a way that makes him a lot different from the other Dark Templar in our game.
Yeah. And
ideas?
the thing is, with Zeratul, Vorazun isn't a hero.
All right, sure.
Zeratul can be a hero. Maybe have he's someone. His whole deal is uniting the both sides of the Templar, right?
That's true.
Vorazun's a Dark Templar.
Mm-hmm.
She's not so much. She's like, well, we're getting things done. But so Zeratul could be more maybe a little bit like Tychus, with some trusted associates and then big buffs too.
So you want a Protoss Tychus?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
Okay.
Amon.
Instead of outlaws, you would have followers.
Yeah.
Zeratul's followers.
Loyal devotees. I think that's already L or X thing. But
Amon.
Amon.
Oh.
Amon. That would be a little odd.
Yeah.
That would kind of break a lot of the missions, wouldn't it?
Probably.
But then again, at the
end
of the day,
announcers say
the real enemy
is yourself.
Yeah. So that would be a whole internal dialogue there. Valerian.
Okay.
Or Mensk. Any of the Mensks.
David Kim.
David Kim.
Yeah, that was suggested on Loco Stream too.
You just you make decisions, and then all your units start to do completely different things that make no sense. Was that even a shot fired? Maybe. Mohander doesn't Mohander already show up for? That's like one of the epic Protoss Void, right? I want to say.
He shows up in the Wings of Liberty mission.
I know he's in the campaign.
Yeah, he's in the campaign, but I don't believe he shows up anywhere else.
Yeah. So, will Tychus be released after Blaze as well?
After Blaze?
Yeah, Blaze, the new commander you're releasing soon.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I mean, so there's still plenty of characters, and is there now how likely is it like a commander will see a rework? Like how often does that? Have you reworked any commanders in the past? I forget if there's an answer to that. Like a serious over like almost completely changing the design and the objective of the commander.
Probably not, but we have been doing like revamps in which we kind of change like half the lineup of the units.
So on that, I want a more pointed question. When you're doing balance changes in co-op, which already sounds kind of weird, what are you looking at and why?
Right, so the primary objective of the balance changes is not necessarily to make all the commanders like equal strength. The primary objective is to have all the possible compositions be within the same realm of viability. So if we look at oh, wrong mouse. If we look at Raynor, a lot of people were using his bio units. His bio units were very good. So what we tried to do is we tried to buff his mechanical units. And after that, we felt like we have accomplished making his mechanical units feel at like a somewhat similar power level to his biological units. Although they probably still won't overshadow
That's the
them.
Terran multiplayer player's dream right there.
Sure.
But you made it come true in co-op.
Yep.
That seems to happen a lot.
Yeah,
Any other examples from the other races?
Sure. So for Kerrigan, Mutalisks, and Broodlords, we powered them up. For Artanis, we powered up. We're going to power up Dragoons pretty recently.
Yeah.
We powered up some of his Masteries. We powered up the Phoenix. For Swan, we completely changed the Wraith so that he deals more damage when you're moving.
Oh, he has Wraiths.
He has Wraiths.
I just make tanks.
Right now, he deals more damage when he's moving, and before he was more of like like a regular air-to-air and air-to-ground fighter.
Oh, and you mentioned Masteries. I just want to touch on that just for a minute. Like, when it comes to Masteries, what are you looking at? And is there, in the future, maybe potentially, I guess, a little more a lot of them are just kind of basic statistical increases. Is there a plan in the future for maybe something like adding another ability or a unit or something like that?
So the idea behind Masteries is to kind of give a little more power to what you
But you
currently
capped
have.
it at what is it, 90?
90, yes.
90.
So our design or one of our pillars rather, has never been about adding new abilities to commanders with Masteries. We try to stay away from that as much as possible. So we want everything. You have to be within the first 15 levels because otherwise it kind of feels like.
And then you got to grind.
Yeah, you got to grind. Like we don't want the grind to be like you need to do this in order to like see everything you can do. Instead, we're giving a little bit of power up to level 90 Mastery.
So we're going to open it up. If you guys have questions overall for Kadong about any, well, ideally co-op related, then feel free. And we will not answer all of your questions, but we can answer a couple, especially if there are things that haven't been brought up. Maybe people in a lot more experienced than me at co-op. I do have some mastery points, but not that many for those wondering. Will there be a prestige mode for co-op after 1,000? Like it just kind of rolls over, but you get a star?
We don't have anything in the works for that right now. We've kind of talked about this before, but it's partially because like very few people have even hit that right now. So maybe after a few more months, maybe after a year. We'll
when does the patch with Tychus come out? Soon?
Soon, TM?
Soon.
That's a pretty common question.
Yeah. Why doesn't Tychus have more female fighters? Well, he associates with who he associates with. Actually, he has
two.
Vega, Lieutenant Nakara. We're not sure what Nux is. I guess. Oh, does a Warhound have a pilot?
Yeah, he's probably a guy.
He's a pilot.
Yeah, his
probably.
name is James.
What about the auto turret?
The auto turret, it prefers not to identify itself.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right.
That's fair. It doesn't discriminate against the enemies either.
Right.
It just shoots at them.
So regarding that question, it's more about what
design,
what units that we had lying around, what two-legged units especially we had lying around.
Yeah.
And I think the units that we picked fill the roles very well.
Why not unlocking skins during the Ascension until 1,000? Do you unlock skins at 1,000? Is that a thing that happens with the Ascension?
We unlock, I believe, emoticons and sprays.
So no skins involved.
Right.
Out of game. Well, I mean they can be used in game, but
Right. So unlocking, I'm not sure. That's an interesting idea. I'm not sure.
or maybe like building. Well, we already have our
'Cause
own
that-
multiplayer thing
right,
about
right,
building
right.
skins, but something like that doesn't affect the unit.
That's something we're looking into.
Yeah.
right
It's
now.
on the table.
Yeah.
Could there be a grindy form to get the paid commanders, like a champion and HOTS? So there is no currency system in StarCraft.
Right.
Are there any thoughts about a way to, if you play enough co-op, maybe get access to more of the commanders?
So instead of that, what we have right now is we let you try the commanders.
Yeah.
Try all
So
the
they tried
commanders.
them, they liked them.
Yeah.
Can't buy them. Anything for them?
No plans in the works right now.
Okay. All right. Go play more online tournaments. Is it possible to have? I don't even know how to say that.
Uraj.
Urazaj, or something like that.
So I know
Oh.
who that. It's he's a Dark Archon from one of the side missions or one
Not
of
a
the
lot of name
additional-
recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of so he's a Dark Archon from one of the additional missions from the original StarCraft 1. I believe
That
he was
sounds
formed
interesting.
by like multiple Dark Templar merging together into one huge Dark Archon, and he was
Just and where does that road end?
right. Like
I want to actually allow custom maps for co-op. So there was kind of like the Rock the Cabinet arcade
Right.
contest where people were able to make custom co-op maps.
Right.
Is there a plan for making that more accessible? Like, can people still upload co-op style maps?
Yeah. So two issues we ran into there is number one, we don't want players to be kind of grinding these co-op maps in order for experience. I think that's a challenge because you could potentially create a co-op map in which you just win instantly, and then everyone would have Star Ascension, level 1000 Ascension.
Well, I'm kind of imagining something like curated, kind of
Right.
like with the Team Liquid map contest. You have your finalists, but Blizzard makes the ultimate decision what makes
Right.
it to the ladder.
Right.
I'm imagining something like on the co-op screen, like maybe on custom, you have an option like maybe 5 or so
Right.
that player created, and then maybe one of those gets added every few months or something like that.
So another
Is that a
issue-
possibility?
Another issue with that is we actually put a ton of time on the maps, on all the maps that we release. And so basically every map that even from the community, we would have to put a ton of work in before I think we would feel comfortable putting it in a
So
the
let's
official
say
live queue.
if someone was really into it and they've gone through, they have a design for a really cool, like really
Sure.
interesting co-op map. If they really want it, where would they get a foot in the door and be like, this is my map and I want someone to at least look at it? Like if they really put a lot of work into it.
Right, you can always post it on the forums. That's like
Battle.net forums?
Yeah, Battle.net
The
forums.
co-op and arcade?
Co-op,
Yes.
yeah. There's a dedicated co-op forum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's like I mentioned before, we pretty much read every post. And
So you will look at it. You might
Yeah.
not respond.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean they don't like you. Just means they really don't like. I mean, but so the possibility is there, but there's still a lot of missions right now as it is. Will there be any co-op announcements at BlizzCon?
I have no announcement about an announcement at BlizzCon.
All right, so possibly. And in terms of map design, do you like? Because that's another angle I think could be looked at. Like in maps, there in the arcade, there are some things like kind of almost third-person shooter type maps. How much discussion, if any, has there been about a co-op map that isn't even really of the RTS design specifically?
So I guess a challenge with that would be how do we make it feel like those maps, or how do we make all the commanders feel, or how do we make all the commanders work on those kind of maps? Because if it's a shooter, I'm not sure exactly how that would work. Like, do you get a marine
Now,
if you're Raynor?
I'm
Do you get a-
imagining something like you play a relatively normal co-op map,
Sure.
and then there's like a phase where you go into like a boss battle
Right.
and do something like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
So we do have something like that with boss battle on Part and Parcel.
Yeah. That's one of my favorites because instead of like, look how many units this is happening, like it's actually you have to look at it more.
Right.
Yeah, I would like something more like that.
So yep.
I saw a good question there. Any plans to edit so you can give control or resources from allies?
Control of resources for allies.
Control or resources.
Nothing right now. Nothing right now.
Do you have a favorite co-op commander you didn't design?
I didn't design, so I have a couple actually. So design-wise, I like Nova because she
This explains a lot.
yeah, she has a lot of decision making involved with her units as well.
Yeah.
Like all her units are pretty good, pretty viable, and I think so the thing I like about her the most is that both newer players and more advanced players can enjoy her a lot.
Yeah.
For example.
Isn't she relatively popular in this?
She's very popular as well. So what I was saying is like she can build like an A-move composition. Like you build Marines, you build Marauders, like her bio units, and you can A-move across the map. And if you do that, you get like 70% of her maximum power. And if you get her more advanced units like Liberators and Siege Tanks, you get 100% of the power. So I really like that gap is that much, about 30%, whereas some commanders, that gap is much larger, like maybe, like for example, Alarak. Alarak's Ascendants are very powerful, but you need a lot of skill. So I would characterize that gap as more of like 50 to 100, or maybe some commanders, you don't get a lot out of them. You don't get a lot more out of them if you're very skilled.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that ties into the interest in difficulty levels and all that.
Yeah. But I have other favorite commanders. Like right now, my favorite commander.
Just give me your top three.
Yeah.
Well, give me your top four. Give me three more.
Another commander I really like is Phoenix.
Phoenix with his like multiple modes and switching
multiple modes, switching out. You can pick champions. So you can pick champions in different orders. So very similar to Tychus as well.
And then one more.
I like Swan. Swan's pretty nice. I like microing.
The laser drill is pretty interesting mechanic compared to a lot of the others.
Yeah. I like the micro involved with Swan though, like with the Hercs and the Siege Tanks. That's really cool.
And I want one more really good question.
Sure.
We got time for one more question. Let's hear your best questions. So, and anything else about just quickly custom mutations.
Sure.
I remember talking with David last year. And he
Right.
mentioned that pretty much you're at the limit and now starting to roll over with both weekly mutations and custom mutators.
Sure.
Is that still the case?
We actually just released new weekly mutations about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so we.
Do you plan on adding those on a regular basis, like to the rotation? Or
Yeah, we'll plan to add future weekly mutations in the future. Sure.
how do you keep your skin so smooth?
I've actually heard that a lot. I don't know. It's weird. I never really thought about it. Is it smooth?
It's smooth.
Okay.
It's very smooth.
I don't know.
I'm looking for one. We got 2 minutes, guys. Oh my. I don't know what I expected from Twitch chat.
Yeah.
But now of the missions, is there do you ever think about going back and rescaling how they work on the difficulties they are? Like some of the earlier missions are way easier on Brutal than some of the later ones.
Yep. That's something we might look into in the future.
Yeah. A lot about of course, you in this situation, you got a lot of people like, can we make it harder and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I do find that the people who view streams, who go on the forums, they represent a very the top end of players. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. I think some people see, oh, these are forum posters who are maybe not as good as I am, or not me in particular, but the person posting. But those guys are actually still some of the best players in co-op right now.
Yeah, I've noticed there are plenty of people who have literally half my MMR who are way better at co-op than me.
No. Yeah.
So it does take some work. And any last thing you want to say to anyone, anything you want to hint at or announce, or at least that you're excited about coming up? 30 seconds.
Well, I'm excited about...
Besides Tychus.
You got me. You got me. I'm excited about... if you're into esports, DreamHack.
Oh yeah, you watch it. He also watching pretty much all WCS, GSL, all of that. Kevin is not just a co-op guy, not by a even long shot is an underestimation. So keep that up. You're going to actually at WCS Montreal is coming up, so that's going to have, I'm sure with it, plenty of things alongside it. And that's the last. Is Cyril going to win?
Probably.
And if someone's going to beat Cyril, who are they? Who has the best chance?
Thermal's been doing some cool things with his mech recently. He gave Cyril a run for his money in WCS Challenger a few weeks ago.
So that's the dark horse.
And Laser's been doing really well. I'm really excited for Showtime. Showtime's been showing some really great games.
Just needs to embrace his inner stats and then pass him so he doesn't lose like him. But it's been Kevin Dong, solid_monk on Twitter. I don't know how much you post about co-op. Do you respond to people about co-op there? You don't have to answer that question. But StarCraft 2 BattleNet forums, they do read it, chat, things like that, in-game chat, things like that. There are ways to get feedback. And thank you for answering my questions. Thank you for being here with us today. And thank you for being a part of StarCraft 2. And good luck, have fun.
Thanks.
Yeah. It's a live stream, so this is where I'll cut it out, and they won't
awkward.
know.
But yeah, YouTube won't know because
they won't know. I'll definitely cut it before this. I'm great. I'm great at all the editing things, all the time, perfectly. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah. Now we can go crazy.
I know. Yeah, that's exactly what we do. Right here.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah, he's got places to be, guys.
Yeah, I have to judge a cosplay contest.
Is that happening right now?
That's. I'm literally going right now.
Go.
Yeah.
Go. And be very biased towards the StarCraft cosplays, if there are any. So they are doing the cosplay contest right now. Well, that's unfortunate.